Executive is one of the classes taught for first-year MBAs at Yale SOM, and basically throughout the year, we're having classes considering business through different perspectives, through the customer perspective, the investor perspective, etc. So this class that comes at the end of the year aims to marry together everything.
We're kind of in a unique junction in society as a whole, and there's much more of an emphasis on making sure you no longer only care about the bottom line. You need to start to understand how your decisions are going to impact multiple people. And the only way you can really do that is taking on these different lenses of looking at your employees, looking at your shareholders, looking at society as a whole, looking at your and looking at your bottom line, and understanding how all of those things come into play.
At the start of every week, we read a case and answered a few sort of like preliminary questions about it with our group. Then we discussed it in class, and then there was always a class session or sort of like an additional session where we heard directly from the founder or a CEO.
It's great to read a case, it's great to like have a discussion with brilliant peers or whatever, but to actually talk to the people who went through those problems and what they learned and what they wish they would have done differently, to me is the most value-add thing that we can get out of these experiences.
The discussions that we were having were relevant, still very relevant to the executives that we heard from, and I think that was a challenge for me and also for my fellow students.
In the Nike case, we learned about a new shoe that Nike was designing at the time called the Space Hippie. And in that particular shoe, Nike was optimizing not necessarily for performance, even though that was one factor, but they were optimizing more so for environmental impact.
The case has to do with Nike's lowest carbon shoe, but it is not a case about sustainability. Some may see it that way. It's really a case about how does a company try to simultaneously solve for the requirements or expectations of many stakeholders. If you're going to make a low carbon shoe, good for the environment, but it also has to be manufacturable by your supply chain partners without having to retool their lines. It has to be a great shoe for the consumer. Comfortable, durable, high performance shoe, a Nike shoe. And importantly, it has to be profitable.
This had implications for operations, so we had an operations expert in the room. This also has implications for who's going to buy this thing, what's the demand for a sustainable shoe, what does it look like? So we had a marketing person, so jointly it was taught by marketing and operations to try to solve a difficult problem.
But the Nike case reinforces all this theory around the fact that executives today should take decisions and look into things through a multi-stakeholder perspective and not just focusing on satisfying one of them, but also have a broader vision, like where they want to see the world going.
The mission of the school is to educate leaders for business and society. The course, therefore, I think reflects the mission of the school, because certainly in a business school, the business component of the mission is already taken care of. But as we think about and society, it's important to realize that society is critical to the functioning of business and vice versa. By virtue of the executive, where we've been forced to think about the role of multiple stakeholders, I think we've learned that society is inextricably linked with business.
And the important lesson that we are trying to communicate in this course is this is not an or, which is it's not that you create value for shareholders or you redistribute that money to employees or the community or a third party. We think the most powerful solutions are going to be an and, which is you're creating value for the different stakeholders and simultaneously you're creating value for the company.